Today is the day in which I will make a second video regarding neo-colonialism. There's my first video right here. And this is something I always wanted to talk about even before I make this channel here on YouTube. And many of my previous videos that I made are actually compass navigation video that help to build up the momentum and ultimately lead my audience to this video. I know there are many audience in my channel who know this stuff very well, maybe even much more than I do, but I also noticed that majority of my audience do not have an accurate picture when I talk about neo-colonialism or financial harvesting. They're like, what are they? So today's video is to answer those questions. I'm going to put timestamp down below as usual, but for my audience that are unfamiliar with the subject, I will advise you not to skip ahead because you'll be confused. And I will go even as far as to say that if my YouTube channel gets removed tomorrow and there's just one video my audience can watch from my channel and remember, this might be the one that I will recommend the most. So let's see how you guys take this. I put up a video a month ago, right here, in which the title of the video is Chinese Intellectual Genius, reviewing the US global strategy. And it is actually a big video to see how many of my audience understand. In that video, I put up a few pyramids, this one and that one and a few others. And I want to see if I can fish out some intellectuals from my audience base and see if there are people who actually understand what this pyramid is. Not just the feeling of it, but actually the mechanics behind the pyramid. And in that video, I also say that according to person, Mr. Wong, who said that in order to really understand the pyramid, especially by yourself, you need to have a good knowledge in the global financial monetary system and also have, according to him, IQ, higher IQ in order to understand these things. And it makes a lot of my audience very, very upset when, the IQ thing was mentioned. And not just from the West, also from the South, people are quite pissed off. So I get people from, let's say, Bangladesh, and he say that, well, of course we're in a pyramid system. I mean, just look around me. This place is crappy and garbage. And I mean, look at Switzerland, and then look at France. Well, not that France, that France. Look at them. How are we not in the pyramid system? I mean, look at my dog here. He's eating off a garbage can, okay? And look at the dog in Los Angeles right there. They're being carried around in their arms and they shower more than I do. Even my dog understands he's in a pyramid system. And how much IQ do you think he has, huh? And then you get someone from, let's say, the collective West and say that, come on, obvious this is Chinese and Kremlin propaganda, right? We're better because we have better culture, better religion, better ice cream. We have just better most of the things. And most importantly, our government is better. Your government sucks, okay? And that's why they are telling you lies to blame your country's misfortune on other countries. I mean, this is just pure propaganda. You need to see through this, okay? Even a caveman right here understand what I'm talking about. So you should too. Okay, fine. I basically piss off everybody. So today is the day which I break down the mechanic of the pyramid system that we're in and see what you guys think, okay? So let's go through the basic argument here. First, we all agree countries on this planet today are vastly different. In terms of development level and wealth and average of standard living, no one should dispute that. Here are things that start to different in terms of opinion. There are countries and people, especially in the global south, who say that we are being oppressed, we are being colonized, we are being taken advantage of, and we cannot reach a higher standard of living, a higher development level, because there are external forces that prevented us from doing so. I mean, even the Ukrainians are saying that, right? It is because of the Russians. If they are not keeping us down, if we are free to choose our own path with the West, then we'll become as rich and prosper as they are. And then there are common narratives in the West. We are prosper because of our culture, our society, because your government is corrupt and our government is not. You suck because your country make bad choices. That's why you are poor, you're messed up. Nothing to do with us. I think that's common understanding in the West, especially among people who do not travel that much and do not have deeper understanding of global politics and economy. Understandable totally, by the way. This is not just for people in the West, and for even most of us in the global South. We used to carry this mindset that as long as we work harder, make better decisions, become democracy or whatever, enforce human rights, allow LGBTQ, all those great stuff from the West, we will become just like them, wealthy as them. That although we all agree on the pyramid, unevenly distributed wealth of that pyramid system on this planet, we can eventually move up the pyramid, right? And that there's certain mobility within the system. We believe that individually and nationally, we can get to a higher standard of living by just making better decisions. Fortunately, today, I'm going to put a dent on that belief. I'm going to argue that there is an invisible hand, a certain mechanic that is keeping the pyramid system intact as the way it is. In the first part of this video series, Mr. Wong stated that colonialism has never stopped. It just changed form. The goal is always to maintain an apartheid world order system. Mr. Wong said that the original colonial system that we know and learn from our textbook has changed into a form of financial and monetary colonialism, which is not taught in our textbook today and is hidden in the weave of our global economy. Let me run down the basics here regarding financial colonialism. And I'm gonna simplify it as much as possible. So if I go too fast and you get confused, just pause the video and use your own imagination to glue the picture together. Let's assume that there's two countries. France, run by Napoleon, and Niger, run by Morgan Freeman. France wants to buy uranium from Niger to produce power in their nuclear power plant. And Niger is very poor and need food and infrastructure and medicine and education and all those things. So in this first scenario, first case, France buys 1 billion worth of uranium at market price from Niger, and Niger get food, infrastructure, medicine, school, whatever those are, priced at also 1 billion. And this is the first case of a normal trade and transaction, okay? It's a win-win situation. Now, in case 2, when France want to continue to buy uranium from Niger, but France has nothing to sell or offer because it's been deindustrialized because of China, evil China, all right? And Niger needs something, and what France produce only is, let's say, wine, French wine, okay? And Niger will be like, we don't need wine, we're poor, we need more basic things. So France will basically say that, well, how about you take our money? I will pay you 1 billion, euro right here, money, okay? And you can use this money and then go to China, okay? And China will give you all the things you need. And then China will take your money, and then China can come to France and buy our wine because Chinese are much richer, and they also enjoy French wine. So that is when a currency enters circulation around the world. And this is also how the entire deal is completed. So everyone gets what they want. Now, in scenario 3, we're now in scenario 3. This is where things get a little bit tricky. France want to continue to buy 1 billion of uranium from Niger, but got nothing but money to pay, okay? China don't want any more French wine because they already have enough, or they want to buy the wine from California or elsewhere. Now, this is a problem for France because if France continue to pay Niger with money, Niger will not have any good use of it because it cannot get the things it wants with the money. And then Niger will also be motivated to go around and offer more money for the stuff they needed that would depreciate the currency, which also France do not want. So now France will need to invent something for Niger to buy. And here comes national bond. So what France do is that, well, I will give you 1 billion for your mineral, your resources, your uranium, and then I will ask you to give this money back to France, okay? And I will put it in my central bank, and I will issue bond to you at 1% interest rate. So let's see what 1% interest rate looks like. Okay, that much. So I will pay you that much per year, and that will conclude our business. Well, now you can say that this is a bad deal. This is not neocolonialism. This is stupidity to get something and then give away the purchasing power you had in exchange for 1% of this. Tell Morgan Freeman to take a math class or economic class. This has nothing to do with neocolonialism. It's just stupidity, all right? Now, here's things turn ugly, which we are going into scenario 4. Morgan Freeman, for example, let's say he did that for a year or two and say that, well, this is not good for my people. My people are still poor. I need to get another kind of deal. So Morgan Freeman will be going to Napoleon and say that, well, my people are still poor. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to spend those money you give me elsewhere. And if you don't have anything good to give me, I might just as well trade the uranium to someone else who offer me real stuff, real goods that I need for my people. And this is when Napoleon gets a little bit, colonial. Here he'll be saying that, well, I try to trade peacefully with you, but you don't want to trade. I think you are not a wise king. In fact, look at your people. They're poor. They're poor because of you. You use some of the money I gave you to buy a luxury mansion in Paris, and your mistress are living in there. I even have proof. I believe your country deserves better. I believe your people need democracy, need freedom from your bad regime. In fact, I have a new leader here for you, for your country. His name is Chris Tucker, and he's also from Niger. He will participate in your election, and I already have the election result here. Look, he won by a landslide, 88.8%. And now he will do exactly what I tell him to do.
I want 20 million in 50.
20 million in 50s.
20 million in 20.
20 million in 20s.
And 10 million in 10.
And 10 million in 10s. You want any fives with that?
Now, I don't want you guys to get all ideological. Nah, this is just math. If the system like this is allowed to continue for years and decades, do you see how the pyramid system is forming and consolidate between the two nations, France and Niger? Because Niger's labor and resources keep getting traded to France while getting only a portion of the purchasing power back. And for any countries, in order to develop the economy, they will need to retain as much of their labor and resources trade value in order to get a higher standard of living. Now, if you make this system 1,000 times more complicated and several million times the quantity in terms of money and value involved, you will eventually get the US system, basically, or the world order pyramid system that I put in my previous video. Now, I'm gonna go through the next part of this video section really quickly because it will take forever to get into all the details. And before I get into all the details, my channel will be long removed from by YouTube. So to enjoy the benefit of globalization, you need to use US dollar, or at least one of the Western-based currency: Euro, Japanese yen, British pound, Canadian dollar, the Swiss dollar, and all these are basically, I would say, yeah, money, right? Money that's internationally recognized. During time of low interest rate set by these Western countries who monopolize the global currency market, liquidity will flood into the global South economy. And when it's time to harvest, they will increase the interest rate, reducing the liquidity and bankrupting many countries that get caught, forcing them to ask IMF for help. And when IMF comes in, which is also complete control by these countries, they will take your most valuable assets and also take control of your central bank. They usually call it making your central bank independent. But in reality, your central bank will be a subordinate of the global elite. And at that phase, you will be in this kind of semi-colonized stage. The central bank then will pressure a country's economic decision to keep a higher reserve currency, dollar usually, make their own currency free flow in the global market. This will make the grabbing wealth or harvesting from country like United States more efficient and more easy. And this kind of strategy is very difficult for a small country to defend against. Sometimes the strategy use some kind of double trap. Let me explain this with the Asian economic crisis back in 1997. So when a country get easy money, liquidity, investment, what do? It's like what normal people will do. They will invest the money, right? You will not put those money just on the table, letting them sit there. You will put it into mortgage, stock market, all kind of different market to try to get a higher return. However, in that case, someone like George Soros will work with the Fed while heightening interest rate to come into your country and attack your economy, forcing a capital outflow. And if you do not have enough reserve currency sitting on the side to hedge against that attack, your country will go bankrupt. And during 1997, Hong Kong is one of the few places that actually survive the financial attack because China spent a lot of effort helping Hong Kong to survive George Soros' attack. When they bankrupt those countries such as Thailand and South Korea and so on, IMF will come in with a bunch of regulation and force those countries to accept. Usually comes with terms like a neutral central bank and free-flowing currency. And then, in order to hedge against future attack like this, countries need to set aside a huge part of their trade surplus as reserve currency in case, another attack will come. But then, we're talking about money just sitting there. What do? You can still invest, but you cannot invest into something that you cannot cash out quickly, right? So what do? You usually go and invest into the treasury bond market in US because your reserve is in US dollar. So those reserve currency, those surplus could have spent in further trade or investment to raise the standard of living of the people in a certain country. But you cannot do that because you have to set aside those money to defend against financial attacks. And then, just so conveniently, those money will be spent into the treasury bond in United States. So can you guys see? It's basically the same thing as what the French did to Niger, what the American did here to these Southeast Asia countries. It's just a more fancy way of doing it. But the result is the same. Over a long time, these trade surplus will recycle back into United States, able to let Americans afford a higher standard of living while suppressing the standard of living in this developing country, consolidating the pyramid system. So as economy grow, the demand for treasury bond of the United States increase, because the bigger your economy, the more money you need to set aside in order to defend against these financial attacks, which allow United States to sell their treasury bond at a very low interest rate return. And this will allow basically the standard of living in United States, for example, to remain higher in comparison to these developing countries. There are many other ways to recycle this money: proxy war, weapon purchase, housing market here in United States, or the option commodity derivative market here in US financial market. All these are basically almost like tools to abstract this surplus from developing country towards the United States. So I know some of my audience will be like, okay, you got this all figured out, right? Then why can't people just use their own currency? Backed by some commodity, if people do not trust it, buy gold or buy oil, because you don't want to trade with Western currency because they are trapped, right? Well, you can ask these two smart ass right here and see how that worked out for them. Well, you can't because they're dead, okay? They have weapons of mass destruction, which is true, by the way, because I need to protect my man here, Bush. You can call him a lot of different things. So he's not exactly a liar. If those guys get to set up their own currency backed by commodity, they will be kind of semi-detached from the pyramid system. And if that system get to live and work, then you will encourage other countries to follow suit and break away from the pyramid system. And that will be a weapon of mass destruction to the US-led financial system. So the weapon of mass destruction is actually a true thing. It's just not what you think. Let's conclude this part, okay? I don't want to dive deeper because my channel will face problem and things will get messy. But let me say this. If we are to cosplay, okay, I play United States and you play a small, medium-sized country that try to counter my financial colonial strategy. As long as you stay in the dollar system of Western financial system, I'm going to get you. It doesn't really matter if you have 10 of the best economists in the world right now running your country. I'm still going to get you, either one way or the other. I mean, I don't even know all the tricks, okay? But no matter what you do, if I can't do it directly financially, I can sanction you or have regime change, color revolution, covert operation. I'm gonna get you anyways. Well, of course, today in our system, there's a problem because there's a virus in the system, an anomaly, a superbug, which is China. China is something that United States really doesn't have a good way to solve. Well, we'll discuss in a future video why China is able to achieve something that other countries cannot. I want to change the direction of my video and go back to the pyramid system, because this pyramid system has a few very unique features that my audience need to understand. Let's go back to France and Niger here. If France is to maintain a certain standard of living for its people at a fixed population, the more country it colonized through this kind of money Ponzi scheme, the less France has to take out of each individual country in order to reach its objective. All right? If you don't understand, you can pause the video and think about it. And this system will be more stable, right? Because it's less taxing to each individual country. There's a certain tolerance level. If you do it too much, too greedy, and went over that tolerance level, you will have rebellion, revolution, like what you just see in Niger and Burkina Faso and all those places. And then, when they break away from the system, You have to either send military force there to suppress the situation, which is very costly, or you have to live with lesser countries within your pyramid system, which you have to then tax those people more, which will break their tolerance level, or you can settle with a lower standard of living. So you will have to bring those inflation back to your own country, and your own citizen will have a lower standard of living. So in a way, it is best, if you have to do it, it's best to stay within a certain tolerance level. Remember that. This is very important for my audience to understand, because I'm eventually going to get to United States, not just in this video, but also in my future video, because US, by using a dollar as a reserve currency, is doing this to the entire planet, okay? Not just France, to a few African countries. And I would say that most of the country during certain period of time, most, again, not all, most country is okay with it, actually. It's not a bad deal, because US keep a certain balance in the world and everything works well, people and countries can grow within the system. But I want to continue to show my audience the bigger picture, okay? Global South country want to develop its own economy and reach a higher standard of living, need to eventually start to retain more value from its production, whether it's labor or selling minerals and materials, okay? Because if you are a very, very poor country, like China, back in the 1980s, I remember my father and my mother make something like $3 each month, which is very, very poor. So when you're dealing with a poor country, and when they try to climb that prosperity ladder, they don't mind trading away majority of the value to their partner, whoever that is, United States or other country, okay? In that case, let me put that into math. If there's $100 to be made, China back then don't mind giving away $90 of profit to United States and just keeping $10, because 10 is better than 3, something like that, okay? But when you try to advance your standard of living, you want to retain more of your labor force and value you created. You start to have friction, with your partner, okay? You want to spend more of those value you earn. Whether you want to get delicious beef from Australia, or you want to buy, let's say, a Nintendo Wii from Japan. You don't want majority of your income get yo-yo back to the United States. So from a national level, instead of throwing those money back to the US, a country like China or many other global south country will want to keep those money and spend it and trade it for something that will improve the standard of living. There's a really fun show in China in which a bunch of rich factory owners or spoiled kids buy all those expensive 4x4 SUV toys, and they gather around under a small hill and try to climb the hill and see which car can get on top and which car will simply get stuck or roll back down. Now, imagine those SUVs are countries trying to go up the hill to climb the prosperity mountain. Not an easy job, by the way, even without the evil French or Americans trying to, steal money from you. Now, the initial climb is usually smooth. This is when the country is poor. They have a lot of momentum because you're willing to trade away your resources or labor for cheap. And many countries are willing to work with you. As you get to the middle of the hill, you need to start reinvesting your earning into many things, such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and buy all those things that will make your life better. You need to utilize all the components of your car, the tractions, the tires, the torque of the engine, and many other features in order to climb that last sector of the hill to reach the level of developed country and get a better standard of living. And this is when your country and a country like US, who's financially colonizing your country, will push back. Because the more wealth and productivity you get, the more meat you have on your economy, the more juice US can squeeze off of your economy using the dollar system to benefit US and its own standard of living. So there will be a resistance, a friction. So the US financial sector will be like a torque limiter. It takes away the torque of your car, or your country in this case, preventing it from reaching a higher standard of living to the level of developed country. So if my audience right now can just close their eyes, imagine US is some kind of demigod, which it holds a lot of power by having the reserve currency of the world and hundreds of cars, okay? Different size, different power, different torque, and they will be stuck at different part of the hill. Depends on US strategy towards their country, all right? The bigger your country is, the higher the part of the hill you reach, the stronger the desire that US will try to take advantage of you because you have a lot of wealth in your country to latch onto. And also you become a threat or a challenge to its hegemony position. If you are a small country like Singapore, you're not a threat to US no matter how rich you get, okay? Now, I want to use all the things that I said to summarize regarding where we are today in the world. This is where the world was. More stable, unipolar, US on top. There's the minions of US below it, and then there's the global south. The US is on top, very happy, good life, is taxing on the global south. But the tax is, I would say, reasonable for most countries. Its minions below is, well, complaining sometimes, but more or less they're also satisfied. And then there's the global south. Most of the country are more or less satisfied or have this delusion that they can climb up the pyramid and eventually get to a better place. Russia trying to grow within the system. China is also happily growing within the system. Many other global south countries are more or less happy as well. There are some smaller countries that are not happy, but there's nothing much they can do, really. If they provoke or challenge the system, they will get basically squashed. So I would say that's more balance. Or let's say there's not enough countries, big enough, power enough to challenge that existing order. But that's before. Now let's look at where we are today, 2024. First of all, US is still on top. Its leadership, especially the financial banking sector, many people argue that the financial banking sector runs the US basically. Well, that has become more greedy and inconsiderate for the global south countries around the planet. So the policy they use right now become more predatory and more taxing to the global south economy. My father and I have argued that if US is able to better manage its financial system, not be so greedy, even if US is heading towards a lazy decline, the Dutch syndrome, if US can just better manage its currency, its foreign policy, control its financial sector better, not be an asshole around the world all the time, it can maybe last for 3-4 decades without problems. So because country like China is actually comfortable within the system and don't mind yo-yo back billions, sometimes even trillions of surplus back to the United States because China is still growing fine. But United States end up trying to reverse the situation. It's a more invasive and aggressive technique towards China and Russia. We go back to this car example, okay? So the cars, the countries that are driving up the hills, they start to get stuck because of US aggressive financial strategy. Some even start to roll back down the hill. And they start to learn why they're stuck and not able to get higher. They start to understand that the dollar financial system is actually the invisible hand that's been passively colonizing them, preventing them to go even higher, strangling their growth. And they start to de-dollarize and start to implement mechanics that can prevent US from stealing the torque out of their SUVs. Now the entire permit system start to wiggle from below. Because Russia is detached already from the permit, one of the biggest resources-oriented economy. China is in some kind of rebellion from the system as well, one of the biggest manufacturing power in the world. And many global South countries are also positioning themselves to be flexible and not get dragged down by the Western system if shit really start to hit the fan. So let me tell you Americans. Europeans already experience a lot of issue already, but Americans, you have problems controlling your inflation, right? The economy seems to be weird, don't you think? This economic cycle seems to be a very weird one. So what is actually happening, what I'm telling you now? The bottom part of that pyramid is detaching itself from the system. China especially is going through the dollarization and is continuing and accelerating. It'll be more difficult for US to balance its budget because you can't tax the economy effectively when they start to move away from the dollar. Now, I'm gonna draw a quick conclusion here because this video is already very long. Many Chinese intellectuals, philosophers, have a more neutral approach to the current world order, or the world basically. We Chinese are realistic people, okay? We gave up many of our so-called individual freedom to reach harmony and balance in our society. If you look at the unipolar world, with US being the godfather, and let's assume there's 10 followers or minions under him. If the godfather, I'm referring to United States here, treat one of its followers very cruelly, very unfair, very unjust, but the 9 other followers, US treat them okay. So the system will be relatively balanced. Sucks for, that one unfortunate follow. However, if US start to abuse its power, and let's say 3 of the followers left the system and start their own, because how abusive US is, then US have to make do balancing the system with just 7 followers, which is more pressure on that 7 who's left. So US either have to lower its standard of living, extract less from the people, or you have to extract more, and those people will also feel the pressure. All right, if you understand. So now what is going on also is that US is trying to chase down, contain, and punish the 3 that left the system. For example, Russia and China. So the 7 followers that are being pressured harder right now in the system is starting to ask themselves, basically, well, why do I stay in this system? Why don't I just leave and go with the 3 that already left the system? And I can have a better life, a better chance of reaching a higher standard of living. So that's why US cannot basically, in a macro international level, why can't you, even with such a high inflation over the past few years, you still cannot contain the inflation down because many of the countries are starting to leave that pyramid system. There's a news right here. As I said, US being the richest country in the world right now with the highest GDP is actually one of the least trade-oriented country in the world, if you can see US compared to the global average. So basically US standard of living depends not on trade, but this kind of financial yo-yo and sucking onto the wealth of other countries. It's not like this 50 years ago or 100 years ago, but starting, I would say, after Nixon break away from the gold standard, it start to go towards that direction. And today's US economy is extremely imbalanced towards the financial sectors, and itself is actually not producing that much goods for trade. So there are people, geopolitical analysts out there who keep saying that US is so aggressive its foreign policy is so bad. It run by military-industrial complex. It's run by Israel lobbyists, Zionists. It's destroying its own international reputation, for example. At the end, I think they do not understand, see US action as unreasonable and stupid because they don't see or understand the mechanics of this pyramid system. If you really understand this pyramid system and you apply the mechanic to US foreign policy and decision making, you will be able to explain most, if not all, of the US decision and actions around the world. I want to put a final thought to today's video. This pyramid system is actually not bad. I'm personally neutral towards this system. I consider myself to be a very inclusive person. I see value in all systems, whether it's democracy, dictatorship, capitalism, Marxism, whatever this pyramid colonial system is, it also has its use, I think. At the end, there's a way to make many systems beneficial to most, if not all, countries around the planet. However, the problem is not with the system, it's with the people who run the system, right? If they are wise, just, and fair, they can keep the system running and benefit everyone. But if the people who runs it is greedy, predatory, and inconsiderate, then you can blame them for trying to leave the system and start their own. And today, many of the global tension is driven by this pyramid neocolonial system, financial neocolonial system, in which US is trying to use all means necessary to retain the hierarchy of the system, get all the countries in, and keep them in, and prevent any alternative system from forming, mainly by demonizing and containing China and Russia. And US will go very, very far in order to achieve its goal. So we're gonna have a rough decade. And to that end, I'll end the video. If you have any question, I'll see you in the comment section.